And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Tuesday morning. Again, better conditions here over the western part of the state, lower central eastern interior. A lot of VFR here from North Gulf Coast right on up across the Brooks Range there to the eastern Arctic coast. VFR Kodiak Island, south central Alaska here, marginal for the Kenai Peninsula area. And then VFR, southwest interior, marginal VFR for the Bering Sea and Aleutians, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, and improving down here over the southern panhandle. And we'll see that continues into the afternoon with VFR over at least the north or the southern three quarters of the southeast coast. Lynn Canal Glacier Bay area there to Yakutat, marginal VFR. IFR, Prince William Sound, still up across the Copper River Basin, and also up over the north central interior, Brooks Range. All of the North Slope and most of the Arctic coast look to be IFR Tuesday afternoon. VFR here over the west southwest interior, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and then marginal VFR for the Bering Sea, Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, Seward Peninsula, on up to Kivalina, Kotzebue, and some VFR breaking out here over the Aleutians. And then for Wednesday morning, IFR building out here to the west with the next system, but good VFR, Adak and Atka, into the eastern Aleutians, almost up to the Pribilofs. In fact, St. George, probably VFR. St. Paul marginal, on up into the southwest and western interior. A lot of marginal VFR here. Pretty good Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island area. IFR up to the north there. And mostly VFR over the inside channels of the Panhandle, with marginal VFR out along the coast and still some leftover IFR here in the Copper River Basin. And then that disappears with some VFR in the central Copper River Basin in the afternoon, staying marginal for the eastern Alaska Range on up into the 40-mile country there to about Eagle. And then VFR, central part of the southeast coast, most of southern Alaska now, VFR, Yukon Delta, into the northern Bering Sea there, St. Lawrence Island, even Nunivak Island. And you can see VFR here for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula area. IFR, Bering Strait, up across the north slope in the Arctic coast. Big batch of IFR out here over the western Bering Sea, spreading eastward to Atka Island. And for passes, tomorrow, both Anatufik and Adigan, mostly IFR throughout the day, Tuesday. Lake Clark and Merrill, not too bad. VFR, both passes there. Call it marginal for rainy. And windy, still occasional IFR for the day Tuesday. Same forecast for Isabel. Mintasta, marginal VFR. Tanita looking IFR. And Portage as well, possible IFR there. And for Chilcoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, well south of Kodiak Island here. In fact, up to the North Gulf Coast, about 4,000 feet or so, 3,000 to 5,000 across the Panhandle, 2,000 feet for the Aleutians and much of the Bering Sea. Icing free out here to the west, and about the only area is a, well, pretty good size area here of considerable moderate icing extending from Prince William Sound right on up and expanding as you get over the northern interior there all the way out to the Arctic coast, and possible considerable moderate rime icing coming into the southern Panhandle. Jet stream, south flowed about 70 knots into the eastern North Gulf Coast there, right over Yakutat, lighter down to the south. Interior not too bad, 65 knots southerlies over the western Arctic coast. And then kind of a easterly flow here, 60 knots, east-southeast Kodiak Island, turning east here over Bristol Bay, and then going across the Aleutians, and it turns around to the west-northwest there, much stronger, up to 125 knots. And at 3,000 feet, westerly flow at 9,000 feet, 35 knots there, coming just west of the southwest coast there, pretty light over the Aleutians. And northwest winds, 20 to 25 knots blowing across Kodiak Island. Small zone of southwesterlies, about 30 knots there over the eastern interior, and easterlies 20 to 30 knots over the north slope in the Arctic coast. 3,000 feet, 30 to 35 knot northeast winds up that way for the day on Tuesday, turning northerly, diminishing to 25 knots through the Bering Strait, and then about 20 knots around St. Lawrence Island. Northwest 40 knots there southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, right across the Barrens. Pretty light for the Panhandle, southeast interior areas. And out here to the west, westerlies 25 to 40 knots. And with that will be some moderate turbulence coming into the western Aleutians during the day Tuesday. Up here, moderate turbulence for the western Arctic coast, western Brooks Range area, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, maybe down to Kivalina, Red Dog Dock in those areas. And also some moderate turbulence in store for Kodiak Island up to Kamishak Bay and the Barren Islands.